It is basic, elementary, but foundational to your deliverance and your healing. You must forgive. I don't care what they did. I don't care how horrible the act was. I don't care if the perpetrator never apologizes to you. You must forgive. In other words, if you see that person, that very person, being attacked on the street, you must be willing to call 911 and ask for the police to come and rescue them. If you see them sitting on the bench and they look like something's wrong with them, like they're having a stroke, you must be willing to pull over, take the time, call 911, ask for the ambulance while you pray for them. You must be willing to feed them if they're hungry. Now, you don't have to hang out with them and have lunch and go to the movies and have all kind of fun with them. They may not be that kind of thing. I get that. God gets that. But you must forgive. You release them of all your right to be angry. You know why? It's not for them. It's for you. This only benefits you. Now, there are relationships that have reconciled, that will reconcile, that do reconcile. And some of those relationships become extremely rich and beneficial down the road. Not all relationships can be reconciled. We know that because some people don't change. If they're abusive, they'll continue to abuse if they're not willing to change. But when they give their heart to the Lord, now, like Mariel said umpteen weeks ago, that very person you refuse to forgive now may be your brother or sister in Christ. Then, what are you going to do then? Now you got a brother or sister in Christ. You hate them? Really? I don't think so. You can't love God saying you hate your brother or sister. So you must reconcile. There was a guy, I'll give you an example. Excuse me. I just got up at 3:45. I haven't had a chance to drink water or anything, so I'm kind of dry right now. But there was a guy who, when I was in the streets, unsaved, totally unsaved, in my early 20s, in the height of my stupidity, I got in an argument with this guy. And it wasn't a deep argument. We weren't yelling. He just said something. I said something. He said something. I said something. Next thing I know, bam, slapped me across my mouth. Well, let me tell you, the only man in my life that had the right to put his hand on me was my father. He was a disciplinarian, but very seldom when he did it, it counted for something serious. And the one time he did it when it was out of time, out of season, and wrong and unwarranted, he, my own father, apologized to me and told me he was wrong, when I wouldn't have even known if he hadn't told me. Now, this man put his hand on me at that very moment. Because, see, I'm not one of those women going to let a man, whip me around. He was dead meat, as far as I was concerned. He had ceased to exist. I had built up this instant wall. See, some of your walls, like the wall of Jericho, takes a holy God to knock some of those walls down. I had built up a wall. And for the next umpteen years, that man was considered dead, non-existent. And if I saw him anywhere, I made a point of not even acknowledging that space being taken up by him. I basked in my hatred towards him. The root of bitterness was so deep. Oh, he crossed the line. He really crossed the line. Now, if he had caught me in one of my really worldly moments, he would have been doing time for doing so. See, homie don't play that. So one day, as Muriel talked about, I'm at church with my hubby. Now I had been saved let me tell you what I did do. When I first got saved, the first month, I wrote a list of all the people. Now do this if you want to. I wrote a list of all the people that had offended me physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, whatever, had offended me. And his name was at the top of the list. All right. Because I had read this word and it said, now I'm putting it in my words. It's Pat's 2 cents paraphrase. If you don't forgive those who have sinned against you, God will not forgive you. You don't forgive them their sins, God won't forgive you yours. Remember that. So I said, okay, if it's all that, I was getting a little attitude. Yeah, I did. Even with God, you'll get an attitude. That's part of relationship. If it's all that important to you, then let me lay it out the way it is. Tell it like it is. Okay. I don't want to forgive him. Kind of like how you like me now. Yeah. I don't want to forgive him. Matter of fact, I hate him so much that if I found out he died, I would go to his grave, get the popcorn, throw a party. Sorry, you guys. I would get the popcorn and throw a party and dance on that man's grave. Celebrate. Now, I said, but, since your word says it, and it looks like it's all that important to you, I don't want to do it. There's nothing in me that will say, yeah, I forgive him. It's not there. I don't have that ability. Now, knowing that, Lord, would you please give me the ability? Now, this was said with tears, but the attitude is what you're seeing now. But it was soaked with tears because there was a war going on. The flesh, Pat, the old man that had the attitude, versus the spirit man that wanted to obey God, wanted to surrender to God. See, those wars will go on. Obey, or not to obey. So, since I couldn't obey on my own, I asked God for supernatural help. And guess what? Show you how God works. 6 months later, a friend of mine, she was my mentor, and I went to Target. We walked in the door. There was a security guard right at the door. Trip this, you guys. He turns around to say, good evening, ladies. And he turns to say good evening. And before he could say it, because you could tell he was getting ready to say something, I said, hey, so-and-so, how you doing? Before I knew it, it just flew out. It was like, where did it come from? Did I say that? Huh? I had witnessed a miracle. I was shocked that I could even do that. I was like, I even smiled? Oh my goodness, where did that? He did this. You know why he did a double take? Because every time I saw him at the club after that slap, I never would even acknowledge him. He was dead meat, and he knew it. So it shocked him that I greeted him with warmth and willingly. So what happened? He was like, well, hey, Pat, how you doing? Shock was all in his voice. I said, oh, I'm doing great. I got saved about 6 months ago. And he said, oh, really? Yeah. So there was a witness right there. He saw an instant about face and giving the credit to the fact that I had gotten saved and God did this. Guess what? This is a bigger trip. Years down the road, I know I just told you, we saw him at church. He walks into church looking all beat up by sin. Good looking guy, but just looking beat up by sin. And my husband and I, he knew my husband and he knew me. Because my husband and I had the same friends, hung with the same club, never met each other while we were in the world. Isn't that crazy? But we knew all the same people that we knew at the same nightclub we hung out at. That is so crazy. So he knew this brother, and of course, I knew him. And he walks in with his wife. And he comes now, he's dragging himself in from the streets, coming under the covering of God to get a new start. He gave his heart to the Lord. Now he's my brother in Christ. Air still clear, you guys. Still clear. We see each other. Milton's like, hey, man, how you doing? He said, hey, Milton, how you doing, Pat? And I mean, we were like, the only one that I didn't know was his wife. But it was really nice. We all introduced, and it was such a nice, it was like a housewarming or homecoming. We were like reuniting in the Lord. And after months and months, he had joined the church. We started hanging out when we had fellowship. We'd all sit together. Reconciliation, you guys. Only God can do that. That night when I was like, who said that? Did I actually speak to him? I pulled my friend aside when we got into the thing. I said, you just witnessed a miracle. And she said, what, man? What are you talking about? You just witnessed a miracle. You see that security guard right there? Well, girlfriend. And I told her, I gave it a whole 411 on it. And she said, Pat, isn't God good? God can get you through anything. I said, I never would have believed an emotional miracle like that. But in your heart, even if the person's dead and gone, you have to be willing to obey. You have to be willing to forgive, even if you don't want to. The flesh don't want to, baby. I don't want to do it. The flesh never wants to. The spirit man, yes, Lord, I'm willing. Make me willing that I should be willing. Do whatever you got to do, but get me lined up with you. God knows your heart. When we say, oh, God knows my heart. Yeah, God knows your heart. And he knows if you mean it. Or if you're using him as a good luck charm. He knows.